Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Executive Vice President of Corporate Relations and Chief Impact Officer at Salesforce, Suzanne DiBianca.
Hello, everyone, and good morning. You're now going to be part of the business part of this conversation. And starting with the incredible presentation we saw from McKinsey, so thank you for that. I want to start just by saying thank you to Helen and to Climate Week. This week, which you've been putting on now for over a decade, has been an incredible galvanizing force for the business community and for me personally. So a big thanks and shout out to you, Helen. And I want to try something a little bit different this morning. I'm not going to frighten you with the dire statistics of which we just saw and are incredibly important. I'm going to try to make the case for climate optimism, which we also heard a little bit about from Governor Newsom. And not the kind of optimism that leads to complacency and inaction. We've seen far too much of that. I'm talking about the kind of optimism that turns righteous anger and impatience into action. The kind of optimism that shines through the delayers and the deniers. The kind that really only a new generation can open our eyes to and has opened our eyes to in the battle against climate change. We've seen some powerful new ideas. You heard a few here. We saw the United Nations put the first ever Youth Climate Action Summit on this weekend. And this rising generation, I believe, is the ultimate renewable energy source. The core, really, of my optimism that Helen pointed to earlier is a major shift that I'm seeing, and I think we're all seeing, is when we look back on this year, I think that 2019 will be recognized as the year that the public perception of the climate crisis changed. The year that we no longer talk about it as an abstraction that manifests itself in another lifetime. And for many of us in this room, that shift happened a few years ago. But for most people, I think this year is the critical turning point. More people and more companies realize that one day was yesterday and that the future is now. So let's build upon that conversation. Let's include climate action in every conversation, every business relationship, and yes, even every contract. I already see this happening from the brilliance and refreshingly direct language of Greta Thunberg to Larry Fink's and who's calling out investors. And at Salesforce, we see more and more of our business ecosystem, of which we call trailblazers, ready to make major commitments and step up to the challenge that's required for generating climate action. So just a little bit of history. Salesforce was founded 20 years ago, and I've had the privilege to be with the company since the very beginning. And since the early days, we've operated with a real true belief that business is an important and critical platform for change. And we're focused on a set of core values in our company, one of which is equality. And we're committed to a just and equal world for all. When we started the company, we were on a path to integrate philanthropy across our entire business with the 1-1-1 model, we called it, which was giving 1% of our time, our equity, and our products back to the communities in which we live and work. And today, 20 years later, there's 9,000 companies, of which some of you are in this room, that have also taken this pledge in over 100 companies. And so the power is really when we come together to do the work. And these 9,000 companies have generated over $1 billion in net new philanthropic money to be invested back into the community. So it's truly amazing when we work together. And at Salesforce, the environment is also a key stakeholder to our company, which is why we deliver a carbon neutral cloud, operate as a net zero company, and will reach 100% renewable energy within the next 2 years. But as we picked our head up and we looked about what was happening in the world, and we saw growing inequality globally and the climate crisis upon us, we know that those with the least are often impacted the most in climate disasters. So we pivoted and pointed our resources towards the United Nations SDG framework as a way to guide our action with an increased focus on the 7 climate goals. But we know that, frankly, it's not enough, that we've just scratched the surface. And I'm here as a representative of Salesforce, but also as a representative for the technology industry as a whole. And just as our planet is in crisis, the technology industry is in a bit of a crisis as well. And technology companies are not inherently good or bad. It's what we do with our innovations that matters. And I believe we must pivot to ensure that our products are used for good. So for example, just last week, we launched something called the Sustainability Cloud, which is a new carbon accounting product that drives climate action and will accelerate our goal to getting to carbon neutrality. We believe that we can bring the full power of our platform to create technology that drives positive social impact and moves the needle on the SDGs forward. So while the pressure builds on businesses and all of us to adapt our supply chains to address carbon emission goals, manufacture with more sustainable products, or ensure fair labor practices, I'm very optimistic about innovative technologies like blockchain and AI that are enabling transparency and predictive intelligence to drive more sustainable practices for our customers. And these technologies, along with all of our involvement, I believe are part of the solution that we need. That is climate optimism. And that's what I got to see firsthand on Saturday. I was privileged to be a judge at the UN Youth Summit. And amongst other conversations, there was a number of young entrepreneur leaders from around the world who stood on stage to deliver their own remarkable technology innovations, such as one woman who was offering an alternative to data centers with a new type of organic cloud in having your data stored in plants instead of silicon in the DNA in plants. Really revolutionary ideas that we need to move the needle. We can't just iterate on the existing ideas. Or another young man from India who built an app for farmers to prevent crop failures and achieve 3 times greater grain productivity annually. So these young people are driving a movement. They're giving me climate optimism. And I'd ask that we all dig deep in our personal and professional networks and be co-conspirators with them. We all have a role to play based on our unique skills and our competencies and our resources. So I challenge everyone here to think about what can you do more of that you have in your toolbox that planet Earth will actually notice. So let's use today and every day hereafter to push further, faster, together for climate optimism. The time is now. Thank you.